Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. The post-election analysis is underway, and we've talked about Republicans being blessed with some of the dumbest political opponents on God's green earth. And this next lefty is no exception. Here is Vanity Fair and MSNBC's Molly Jong-Fast blaming not just misogyny, but institutional misogyny and sexy images for Kamala's downfall.
He leaned into a lot of the institutionalized misogyny as a way to try to neutralize her effectiveness. So she's a super effective speaker, really galvanized voters in a really important way. And what the Trump campaign did, and I think ultimately they were able to, was they flooded the internet with over-sexualized images of her. They spread lies about her romantic history.
That is so completely divorced from reality. It's unintentionally funny. Did she actually claim that Kamala is a really effective speaker? The word salad queen who can't utter a coherent sentence to save herself? But Molly wasn't done yet. Listen to this bit of bat poop crazy analysis where she claims that Kamala's own campaign, which was hyper-focused on securing the female vote, was actually anti-women.
And you'll remember, he ran this bros campaign, right? A campaign that was largely sort of anti-woman in a way.
Look, it's only a matter of time before Molly joins the other crazy cat ladies and cuts her hair on camera to protest Trump and democracy.
Have I given up on America? Yeah, I've also given up on coloring this hair because, right? Coloring my hair, having my hair be long and luxurious, all that being skinny, being hot, and all the things that the patriarchy wants us to be, because clearly they don't give a about us. And I'm talking to you too, those of you ladies who have the internalized misogyny required to do what you did. Minorities who are so scared of a woman in power that you'd rather cozy up to the white man just in case some crumbs fall off his plate so that you may eat from them. Yes, scraps. I don't know how to work this thing, but I'm on my way.
Put to one side the dementedness there, the racism, the bold-faced racism against minorities who voted for Trump, and marvel at just how hopeless this woman is. She can't even work a clipper. A literal monkey could work clippers. They're not hard to work out. Let's take a little trip down memory lane to just a few weeks ago when supposed sensible lefty Bill Maher had convinced himself that Kamala was going to win and win comfortably. This has aged like a glass of milk.
Am I going to worry about it? First of all, I'm not going to worry about it, Phil, because he's not going to win. First of all, she's definitely going to win the popular vote, as Democrats almost always do now. But I think she will win.
Oh dear, how wrong can you be, Bill? You want to pretend you're the critical thinker, the leftist who isn't protected from reality, but your Trump derangement syndrome has you uttering absurdities like this. I hope Dr. Phil stepped in with a prescription after this rant about Trump's supporters.
His followers, I think, I don't think their heart will really be in it, as it was in 2020. Some of them, there's lots of people who will always be in the bunker with Mrs. Goebbels taking the poison and giving the poison to the children because it's better than living in a world without National Socialism.
Dr. Phil's face says it all. This dude is beyond help. Bill Maher may occasionally say something sensible, essentially copying what conservatives have said for years, what we've said when it actually mattered, but in the end, he's just another lefty losing it, like this dude on CNN having a full-blown tantrum because a conservative on the panel, Shermichael Singleton, actually used accurate language to describe boys as boys.
There are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball. I'm not going to sit there and listen to that.
Let's reset for a second because, look, this is a really heated issue, right? And Shermichael, I know you. I know that you understand that people have different views on this. I think out of respect for Jay, like, let's try to talk about this in a way that is respectful.
No, shame on the host there for siding with the fringe-dwelling hysterical clown and trying to police the completely accurate and reasonable language of a man who was making the pertinent point that most normal people don't want boys in girls' sports. But the white dude for Kamala, well, his tantrum was not over yet.
So the way regular people interpret it,
that's not regular people. That's not regular people. There's no consensus that these are actually boys. This whole thing about trans girls is a canard. We're talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the population using rhetoric like you just used, saying this is boys playing girls sports. First of all, we're talking about 5 people in the entire country. We're talking about trans girls being allowed to play with the people who are in their gender. And if you don't believe, you don't have to listen to me. Listen to the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association.
The American Medical Association.
You can see why Donald Trump won in a landslide. And here is Jon Stewart with a message to the pollsters who protected the left from the truth, from the reality that they're the minority.
Send a quick message to all the pollsters, the election pollsters. Me. I don't ever want to from you again, ever. I don't ever want to hear, we've corrected for the overcorrection of the voters. You don't know about and I don't care for you.
Joining me now is Newsweek's senior editor-at-large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, Joe Biden will be hosting President-elect Donald Trump on Wednesday, the man he called a fascist, a white supremacist, a threat to democracy. How's that meeting going to go?
You know, Rita, if half the people that have been calling Donald Trump a Hitlerite fascist, a unique historical threat to American democracy, our constitutional order, if half these people took themselves seriously, they would have already bought plane tickets out of the country. I mean, either the man is Hitler, either he is a Nazi, or he is not. If you believe what you've been saying, even to the slightest degree, you would have been seeking asylum. You would have been trying to flee to Canada at a bare minimum, the longest border in the world, the U.S.-Canadian border. I mean, these people just cannot be taken seriously. I mean, Joe Biden, his meeting with Donald Trump, I mean, Joe Biden has been saying that Donald Trump is Hitler, so is Kamala Harris there. But Joe Biden, as we just saw in that clip, is also not a particularly well man. He cannot finish a coherent sentence at this point there. So at this point, I'm just hoping that this meeting somehow goes off where they can actually physically communicate to one another. I mean, that is actually the barest of bare minimums, is that he can actually complete sentences in the English language and they can have a conversation. Now, the good thing about Donald Trump, as you know, is that Donald Trump has been president before. He literally has already done this for 4 years. So he probably doesn't need the whole tutorial, the whole learning curve thing. He's been there, done that. He has sat at the Resolute desk. He has been there before. So look, I mean, this transition period is off to a blistering start. The nominees, the personnel were being named on a day in, day out basis there. It's basically going to be an all-out sprint at this point until January 20th, 2025, when Donald Trump, God willing, finally takes power and Joe Biden has seen the ash heap of history.
Now, what do you make of the theory that Joe Biden got his revenge on the Obama-Pelosi-led coup against him by endorsing Kamala Harris, a candidate they didn't want, a candidate that Barack Obama didn't want? Did Joe know that she had no chance of winning, and by endorsing her, he kind of forced everybody else's hand?
You know, I don't think that Joe Biden knows what he's doing. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but I genuinely do not think that he is fully in control of either his physical or his mental faculties at this point here. I mean, anything that Joe Biden does, I guess what I'm saying is it's not actually coming from Joe Biden. It's coming from quote unquote Dr. Jill Biden. It's coming from people around him there. Joe Biden is not calling the shots at this particular point there. I mean, the funniest thing to me that I have seen since last Tuesday's election, there is a lot of funny stuff out there. I mean, The View, the left-wing media, they're having conniption fits. Sonny hosted on The View is routinely just saying that the only reason Kamala Harris lost is because of rampant, ubiquitous sexism and misogyny in America. I mean, way to actually miss what's happening right under your nose. But one of the funniest things of this post-election fallout to me is the way that the Biden camp and the Harris camp just continue to snipe at each other as if they are the problem. Let me be very clear. In my opinion, Joe Biden is not the reason the Democrats lost. Kamala Harris is not the reason the Democrats lost. The reason the Democrats lost is the Democrats, is for the actual stances they have taken, for the actual completely radical, out-of-touch nature of the various positions they have taken when it comes to gender, to race, to immigration, to culture, to economics, to foreign policy, you name it. They are completely out of touch with the median American, and unless and until they actually have the introspective moment where they look in the mirror and they actually realize that, unless and until that happens, I think Republicans are well set to continue winning well into the future at this point.
Well, that analysis has been just so completely divorced from reality. If they don't actually figure it out, we're going to see a dynasty of Republicans in the White House, because they seem to be doubling down, the Democrats, on the craziness, the identity politics, the victimhood, all the dogmas that have really crippled them as a party and alienated them from so much of their supporter base. I want to play you a clip from Megyn Kelly, a woman who has had clashes with Donald Trump in the past, but she was a very strong supporter for him in 2024. And here she explains why the Democrats and their miserable cat lady ideology lost.
Standing up for female empowerment, which I've done my entire life, does not require me to all over American men. I'm sorry. But this is why I never called myself a feminist to begin with, because I knew what you leftists thought of feminism. It meant abortion and crapping on men. And most of us women over on the side of the normies don't want that. We love our husband. We love our boys, our sons, our dads, our brothers, our male friends and colleagues, and we are not ready to consider this a zero-sum game where we must advance at their expense. Until you get that through your thick head, you'll keep losing.
God, I love her. She makes some excellent points there. The Democrats would do well to listen to the likes of Megyn Kelly instead of the ladies of The View or the MSNBC crazies, because if they actually listen to that, they could address it and be competitive next time.
Yeah, Rita, they could, but they will choose not to do so. And I think that they have a very concerted reason why they are choosing not to do so. I mean, look, one of two things has to be true when it comes to this post-mortem analysis, if you can even call it that Democrats are very publicly engaging in. On the one hand, they're actually really stupid. I mean, like, one possibility is that they're genuinely operating at a low IQ level. I don't actually believe that to be the case. I genuinely actually do not think that is true. So that raises the alternative possibility as to what actually is going on here. And what I was discussing with some others here earlier today, I'm actually on the road to speak to some college and law school students. So what I was discussing earlier today with some college students that I'm speaking to is what I think is happening. The Democrats have become so convinced over the course of 15, 20, 30 years, especially since Barack Obama in 2008, they've become so convinced of their own moral and ethical and indeed intellectual superiority. They are so convinced that they are actually better than the rest of America, flyover country, the people who live closer to a river valley in America rather than the two coasts and people like that. They think that their values are better. They think that their way of life is better. Their approach to everything from religion to economics to transgender to immigration to race. They are so convinced that they are superior, that therefore the only possible explanation as to how the political party that ostensibly embodies and exudes this great virtuous movement, the only reason why it could possibly lose under this ridiculous analysis is that half the country is actually racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. That is actually, I think, what you're seeing out there. Megyn Kelly is obviously spot on. She's one of our most astute observers of the American political scene today. She's actually giving a very free bit of advice here to a political party that is not her own. They would be very wise to take it, but they're probably not going to do so.
Well, I think you've been too quick to discount the low IQ explanation. I think that may be at play as well. You wrote a fantastic piece about the end of Obamaism, it's hard to say, for Newsweek. That piece is being shared widely. The American people have definitely rejected that agenda. They are backing Trump's MAGA movement. What will be the impact on Barack Obama's legacy here? And what do you see, not just for the next 4 years of Trump's second term, but beyond that?
You know, this is one of the most important questions that I don't think we know the answer to yet. In fact, my father-in-law just asked me this question the other day, and I wasn't sure how to answer him either. Look, if Democrats are actually going to be intellectually honest, if they were actually going to arrive at the correct conclusions as to what went so catastrophically wrong in this particular election cycle, then they're going to realize that the Barack Obama coalition is over, that the one-time coalition of the ascendant, as was commonly referred to, has actually now descended into utter ruination and decay and decline, and it has just totally and completely collapsed. And this is a coalition that was formed based on all the intersexual constituent parts of America. You had Black and Hispanics and immigrants and young people and this and that, and it's all done. I mean, Donald Trump has shattered that coalition. So it logically follows that if Democrats are actually going to soberly realize that the guy who put his entire legacy on the line yet again, Barack Obama, which he did this cycle, he spoke at the DNC in Chicago, he was all over the campaign trail for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in those final moments. He really put his entire two-term legacy on the line for this miserable, awful ticket, and he lost big time. So if you combine the fact that the ticket actually lost and then Barack Obama's signature coalition lost, he should be gone. I mean, he should be out of public light. He should be relegated to Martha's Vineyard, go host some fancy cocktail parties for your elite crowd, whatever there. That is what should happen. But again, to circle back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think that they're actually going to arrive at any of the correct conclusions. So I seriously think, Rita, that 4 years from now in 2028, when J.D. Vance will probably be elected the next president of the United States, I think 4 years from now in 2028, Democrats are just going to run the same playbook all over again. I don't think it's actually going to work any better 4 years from now than it did this cycle.
And we're going to have the same pollsters telling us how close it is, and they'll be terribly wrong again because they are sampling the wrong people. You've been busy this week. You've written about 6 pieces. I don't know where you find the time to sleep. But one of those pieces was for the New York Post about what Trump hopes to achieve in his first 100 days in office for his second term. We know he's all about America first. That's the agenda. But what do you expect to see in terms of the war in Ukraine and the war between Hamas and Israel?
Well, from a foreign policy perspective, I think Donald Trump is going to prioritize finding an off-ramp for both Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. Look, he has said in the past that he is going to get this deal done in one day. I'm not entirely sure that that is going to happen, but I think it actually is going to happen sooner rather than later. The difference between Donald Trump and Western leaders writ large when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine conflict is that Donald Trump, as a businessman, understands a certain thing called leverage. And he understands that when you incentivize Vladimir Zelensky and you communicate to him that the entire West is going to arm Ukraine to the brink unless and until they recover every single square inch of territory, that's not exactly sending the right incentives to wind down this conflict. But Donald Trump is a pragmatist. He's a realist. I think he's going to find a way to get an end to this conflict sooner rather than later, probably in the first 100 to 200 days at the absolute most, possibly even sooner than that, when it comes to an off-ramp that can be ultimately taken back to be politically palatable for both Putin and Zelensky. When it comes to the conflict in Israel, I think Donald Trump is basically just going to tell Bibi Netanyahu, do what has to be done to wrap this thing up sooner rather than later when it comes to both Hamas in Gaza as well as Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Iranian piece of the puzzle is a little bit more complicated, of course. That's not going to happen overnight there. But all indications that I've seen thus far are that Donald Trump is going to put back into place all of the maximum pressure campaign tactics that he had against the Iranian regime the first time, including the sanctions on oil exports. Really, it's the lapse of those sanctions that the Biden-Harris administration has put into place that have funded the regime, that have led them to sow the seeds of jihadist chaos throughout the region these past 4 years. I think we're going to see a very similar Iran policy that Donald Trump had the first time around, and that was a very good policy, so I hope it to be the case as well.
Now, before you go, I mentioned at the top of the show that you predicted Donald Trump would win every single swing state. I don't think anybody else was that confident about that. You said it was not going to be close. Ignore the polls. It was going to be a landslide. You were right about that, and you've been saying it for some time. So the question is, why were the pollsters, the overwhelming majority of them, so wrong? How do they keep getting it wrong? Are they not losing all credibility? We had one pollster suggest that Iowa was up for grabs for the Democrats, and Trump ended up winning it by 13, 14%.
Yeah, and by the way, that pollster in Iowa, her name is Ann Seltzer. She's the chief pollster for the Des Moines Register, the biggest newspaper in Iowa. You know, she's considered to be the gold standard of Iowa pollsters. In fact, in the first in the nation Iowa caucuses, it's the final Ann Seltzer poll that traditionally has been looked to as an actual projection. So, you know, even the pollsters here in America that are considered to be the best of the best, the point that I'm making, have been just totally botching the Trump phenomenon, frankly, since the get-go. And I actually think, Rita, and the reason that I was able to predict, I think, the fact that Donald Trump would sweep all 7 of the swing states across the Sun Belt and the Great Lakes area, the reason is fairly simple, and it's structural and methodological, is that the pollsters thus far have still not found a way to tap into the low propensity Trump voter.
Josh Hammer, thanks for your time this evening.